Did the stream start?
To get our program going. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. Thanks for tuning in to today's live video call with museum paleontologists. And welcome to everybody who's joined us here downtown Raleigh for today's live call as well. Thanks for coming out to the museum. Thanks for tuning in if you're watching live on the museum's YouTube channel. For today's program, I'm very excited. This is one of the most fun things I think we do here at the museum, is that paleontologists, our experts on ancient life, including things like dinosaurs, go every summer out to places like New Mexico, Utah, Montana, and more, and they dig in the dirt and in the rocks looking for fossils. Right now, this very moment, our teams of paleontologists are, I think actually right now, spread all over the world looking for dinosaur fossils and more. And because of, technology is so cool, they can actually call in to us here inside the museum, and we get the chance to hear about what they're finding, hear how the work is going, as well as ask questions about what it's like to work in a dinosaur quarry, what it's like to be a paleontologist working in the field, doing things that so many of us only see in, like, I don't know, the beginning of the Jurassic Park movies or something. So it's a lot of fun. We're going to have a great time. Everybody, let me introduce you to today's very special guest. It's Lisa Herzog. Everybody say hi, Lisa.
Hi, everybody.
Lisa is the Paleontology Research Lab Operations Manager. So if you've been here in the museum or visited us and you've gone up to the third floor of the Nature Research Center building, and you look inside the glass walls of the Paleontology Lab, you'll see people who are down there sitting at microscopes, working with tools, doing the work of preparing fossils that have come out of the ground and then come to Raleigh for scientists and researchers, pieces that might go on exhibit. And all of that effort is coordinated by Lisa and so much more. Lisa, welcome to the Daily Planet here.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for calling in,
I think this is
Lisa.
a great... you're welcome. I think this is a great way to try and show people what it's like in the field. That's the biggest question I get from, like, friends and family is, what is it like out there? And so here we are, out in the field.
So you're saying out in the field, where exactly are you right now?
So we are in Utah right now. As you can see behind me, we're kind of out in the middle of nowhere. The closest town from here is about a 40-minute drive. And so it's all just sort of pristine landscape. And a lot of the rocks you can see behind me are part of the outcrop that we're looking at, the sedimentary rocks that we're looking for fossils in. And there's a lot of exposure out here of those types of rocks. And so I'm actually still at camp. Unfortunately, we're unable to stream from our quarries because there's a zero cell service there, not even with a booster. So the rest of the crew is out. They're digging today. They're at one of our quarries called Pit of Despair, which is kind of a pit of despair. It's a lot of digging and not a lot of bone, but what we're pulling out of there is really, really interesting because it's a new species. And so we want to make sure we get every bone so that we can describe it in the scientific journal and name it.
Oh, wow. Fascinating stuff. So, okay, there was a laughter went through the crowd here at the name Pit of Despair. That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's a pit of despair. It's a huge quarry. We've had to move a lot. I mean, tons and tons of rock by hand just to get down to the bone layer. But we found some really interesting things. Not only are we collecting this one species of dinosaur that we found, but there's also fish material in there. We're finding a lot of clams because this site, when it was fossilized, it was kind of in a deltaic area close to the shore of the Western Interior Seaway. And so these, we're looking at about 98 million years old rock beds here. And this landscape was much different back then. You know, it would have been a lot less dry, and there would have been a lot of water around because it was close to the shore.
Fascinating stuff. Really cool. So you mentioned that you've been finding and digging up some bones and fragments of an animal that you think is going to be a new species that you're going to get to write up. Tell us about what else you're finding as you're digging, because you have several dig sites all going at once. Is that right?
We do. Currently, we've got crews at 3 different sites. And so the bulk of our group right now is working the Pit of Despair. We created a big jacket that we're going to have to carry out later today. It's like a mile walk, and we have to hand carry it. And so we'll put it on a stretcher and have like 6 people carrying it out all together. This is common for us. And then we've got another crew at a different, smaller site that they're pulling out. We're hoping that it was something else that we haven't seen before out here. And they're kind of investigating that site to see if they can find anything new there. When we find sites, the way we find them is the fossil's already partially eroding out of the ground. And so it's all broken up on the surface, and we kind of have to dig into the hill to find the really good bone, like the pristine bone, the kind that you would see on a mount in a museum. And so they're trying to get to that layer to figure out if there's, you know, what's there and if there's anything worth digging even farther in for. I think they're wrapping up that site today because we need to maybe do a little bit more excavation on it next year. And then I'm working with my son. My son Victor's out here. He's my umbrella holder. And we're working a different site that is, it's kind of a mishmash, a wash with a whole bunch of different things, which can be frustrating because you're not going to find a complete skeleton of any one thing. But it's really good for paleontologists to really understand the environment because you get a little bit of everything. And so we're finding in this quarry, we're finding like plant-eating dinosaurs, we're finding crocodile material, we're finding meat-eating dinosaurs. There's fish material in there, turtle stuff, every once in a while, maybe some eggshell. And then aside from collecting big bones that we can see, we're collecting bags of sediment that we'll wash when we get back to the lab and look at under a microscope, and we'll be pulling microscopic elements out of that. So a lot of fossils or a lot of animals that had lived during that same time would have been really small, like salamanders or frogs or something like that, you know, and you can imagine their bones are real small. And there probably were even mammals at that time. And so we find really tiny mammal teeth and stuff. So we have to look big and we also have to look small. And so it's a lot of different collecting techniques for, you know, it's a lot different collecting a big bone where you have to make a big plaster jacket for it than it is collecting the microscopic stuff that you would just put in a bag.
And so are you out there, are you looking for everything? Or are you just getting whatever you can find? And then you mentioned the bone, just, you see it eroded out of the ground. So that's just sort of right there at the surface. But how do you know where to look?
Well, you know where to look because the geologists have been out here and have done analyses of the rock layers. And when the program out here was started by Lindsay Zano, the head of Paleo, and so she's specifically wanting to look in a certain time frame because there's not a lot known about the animals during the mid-Cretaceous. And so we came out here specifically because the rocks are from that time period, from the mid-Cretaceous. And we, you know, she has been able to describe some things that are filling in gaps in evolutionary process of these animals. And so like one of the things that have been named out of here that was found probably about 2 miles from here was Moros intrepidus. which is a transitional tyrannosaur. So if you think of Tyrannosaurus rex being, the apex predator during the end of the Cretaceous, during the Middle Cretaceous, Tyrannosaur species were a lot smaller because there was a different apex predator during this time period. And so we were able to find that, collect it, and describe it to kind of give a bigger picture of, both space and time. And so we're collecting anything we find and looking at it very closely. And, hoping to just continue to fill in the entire ecosystem of this particular area and put it in context with time.
That's awesome stuff. Excellent stuff. So to do this work, how long have you been out in the field so far this summer? Like, how long have you been working in these quarries just this year? But how long do you expect to be able to keep digging up new dinosaurs and new fossils from a region like this?
New things are coming out all the time. And we've been working this particular area. We've been camping at this same campground or camp area for 10 years now. And we could just keep coming out here for decades to come because more things are eroding out. And, you find different parts of a skeleton each time. So the unique thing about these beds, we're digging in what's called the Mustn't Touch It member of the Cedar Mountain Formation. A lot of people like the name because it's called Mustn't Touch It. Must not touch it. We are definitely touching it. But the preservation isn't great. We're not going to find a complete skeleton anywhere. And so each time you find something, it's a different part of the skeleton that has preserved usually. Like maybe, we found part of a leg or part of an arm, and we're always looking for skull material. Skull material is really rare because it's very delicate and thin a lot of times, especially in the theropod meat-eating dinosaurs. Their skull bones are really thin and delicate, and, so it's always the prize to try and find skull material of this stuff. And so each time we find something eroding out of the ground, the hope is that you're going to be finding more of a skeleton that, bones that you haven't found before of a specific species.
And I would remind everybody if you're here in the theater with us or watching online, you can ask questions as well. Type them up, post them into the chat on YouTube, or if you're here in the room in person with me, just wave at me if you've got a question. You can come over, actually use the mic, talk directly to Lisa and ask her questions. Lisa, though, while people sort of think about questions they might want to ask, can you give us a little bit of insight into the process of digging the fossils up from where you are and then getting them back to Raleigh?
Sure. Yeah. We have a lot of equipment and tools, and out here we're working on federal land, which requires permitting, and there are a lot of rules and restrictions with that permitting. And so the sites are remote, and a lot of times we have to hike to them. We can't drive right up to a site, dig it up, and then drive away. And so a lot of it is just walking and carrying this stuff. Once we find a site, we will explore it. We'll just start digging in to the ground and removing some of the bedrock to try and find out how extensive it might be, how much bone is a given area. And then, since this stuff is already starting to erode, we have to use different types of consolidants and glues to make sure that stuff's not falling apart even more while we're collecting it. And sometimes things are small enough that we could just collect it and put it in a bag, but a lot of times we have to use plaster impregnated bandages to protect the specimens, and we'll have little field jackets. And if anybody who's actually at the museum can go up and visit the paleontology lab that's on the third floor of the Nature Research Center, You can see some of those specimens up there that we've collected previously that are in really large field jackets. And so it's just a matter of getting that stuff out safely.
All right, everybody.
Without damaging the
fire
bone.
alarm. Make your way to the fire stairs that are that corner.
Sorry, Lisa. We're having a fire alarm.
Stairs, the main
Oh,
stairway.
come on.
The stairwell there. If you have wheelchair or wheels that you can't get down the stairs, you can stay in the fire well. Hey, Lisa.
Yeah.
I can't.
You guys have to vacate the building, okay? So we can just cut it off if you want now, or we could try to reconnect later.
This is going to be at least a half an hour.
I'm sure, yeah.
I think we're done. We're done. If we're still streaming live, everybody, thanks for tuning in. I gotta go.
Yeah, sorry everyone. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. You can email me at lisa.herzog@naturalsciences.com. Have a great day. Goodbye.